Hey everyone, and welcome back to Marketing Corner, episode 81.
Woohoo!
Yeah, and if you haven't noticed already, we're recording virtually this time around, and there's a bit of a reason for that, and also, if you've missed us for 2 months or so, there's also a reason for that.
It's entirely my fault.
Or a baby boy's fault, maybe potentially.
A little baby boy's fault. Yes. I had a baby boy in June 14th. He came 2 weeks early. So actually, we were supposed to have. Thank you very much. We were supposed to have a couple more episodes record. I think we were supposed to record like the next day, and I had to message you going,
Can't do this. No, we're off.
Can't do it. So we should have had a couple more episodes before, but that's life.
Yeah, so, and then summer came along and everything else. So if you've been missing us, don't worry. We haven't stopped. We just had a bit of a summer break / newborn baby break.
We haven't broken up. Casper and I are still very much in a loving professional relationship.
and trust me, it's only gonna get better. Yeah. So we're gonna kick things off here after summer, where you're probably listening to this, with some pretty cool with a pretty cool topic today. And it's something we both have experienced at our jobs previously, and also where we are today. And it's more about like, how do you keep specialists happy? How do you keep them employed in-house or like in your company? And it starts from something I've discussed with my advisory board and how to keep my people happy, and we know you face the same at Onamundo. So that's where we start, and then I think we're gonna mix it up with a little bit of rant about titles in general, but that's a different. We'll get to that.
We'll let the rants happen organically.
Yeah, exactly. So on that note, is this something you've experienced, Jen? Like struggling with keeping specialists motivated around in the company and having some sort of career progression for them? Is that something you've experienced? Let's start there.
Absolutely. I think most of us probably have experienced at one point or another where you hit a certain stage, and even personally myself, right? You hit a certain point of your career, you're ready for the next challenge, you're ready for that next promotion, you're ready for that next salary bump, but the company doesn't need that role, or the role isn't ready yet, or whatever that might be. How do you stay motivated? And as a people manager now, how do I keep my people motivated? How do I keep my talented people when I can't make everyone ahead of or pay them the salaries that they want, right? Yeah. How about yourself?
Absolutely. Definitely. And I feel there's some roles, positions that are more prone to being feeling this than others. I feel like especially creative roles, design, videography, not as much copywriting potentially, because that's more content, and there's some bit more avenues to growing there. But especially things around design. And sometimes also operations, which is also very very technical. But there's roots, but those type of roles are hard because let's take designer as a classic example, right? Like you have a designer on your team. Let's say you have a marketing team of 10 people, and that's supported by one designer. It might grow to the point where there's 2 designers, so you can give the one designer management if they want that. But most of the time, sometimes a lot of marketing teams I at least work with, they just have one designer, and that's how it's gonna stick around forever, like almost forever. So how do you keep that person? Like, they're not gonna move into management of design because there's no one to manage. And most of those people, they're hired because they're good designers, and sometimes that's not necessarily that's what they want to keep doing. They want to keep doing design. Then you don't want to elevate them to a head of content or head of communications and brand or something, because then they're not doing design anymore, and that's actually what they really want to do and what they're good at typically. So that struggle I've seen so much.
And I think this also, I think we're going to dive into that, right? How do we get the specialist? But I think there's also another thing I do want to touch on, and we kind of mentioned it, I think, in a previous podcast, is this idea that if you want to go further in your career, you have to manage people. And not everyone is meant to manage people. Sorry, some people are really good at it, and some people just are not. And I've seen before where people who are not good at it, who don't want to do it, they know they're not good at it, but if they want to climb in their career, they have to do it. and then they become a people manager, and then no one's happy. So I think that's also kind of the double-edged sword of wanting to promote people and wanting to help people progress in their careers. Is if you want to progress in your career, a lot of times that means you have to manage people, and not everyone is born to be a people manager.
Exactly. I think we were talking about before this episode a little bit about good old Steve Jobs, but he actually said something, and I'm not sure I agree anymore. Like, because he said like the people managers the managers you want to get are the ones who don't want to become managers. And that's because he's referring to the specialists who actually say they don't want to become managers, but they take up the mantle of being a manager because no one else has the ability to do what they can do. And that's his point. But also, whenever that happens, I always feel like that sounds miserable, man. Like, that doesn't actually sound good for anyone. Like,
and if you have a shitty manager, you're gonna leave.
And all things
so it impacts
considered,
everyone.
Steve Jobs, you can say a lot of things about it, but he was not a good manager. Like,
No, that's what I've heard as well.
that's I haven't worked for him, but that's at least what the market tells us. Let's put it that way. So I'm not sure that's the solution either. I think that's what I'm getting to. Like,
We have a saying in English. I know you guys have a lot of sayings in Danish, but in English we say shit rolls downhill.
Yes.
So if you have a shit manager, it's going to roll downhill to all the other people. So it's really dangerous to put people, people who aren't meant to be people managers in that position. And there was actually, I think I just saw on TikTok, because I'm one of the youths now, but someone had mentioned that there was a Harvard Business Review that found hiring a toxic manager who's really, really skilled in what they do is worse for your business financially than hiring someone who isn't as skilled, but they're a good people manager, because you cause people to leave and you cause churn and you cause stress. And
yeah. And I feel like it happens across every role, but one role where it happens even more, this is anecdotal, I have no idea if this is true, but I feel like that this is true, is sales. Because what happens is, if you're a good salesperson, then you get more and more commission, and then you get promoted into, and over time, you become less and less of a salesperson and a sales leader. And while some people might thrive and be great at that, definitely happens, but there's a lot of people who are just like, you're just good at sales, you're not a good people manager. And oh God, I have seen that so much. Like, so much. People who get promoted because they performed well as a salesperson, and now they're managers, and like, they're horrible at people managing. Like, it's really bad. And I think that's like, I don't have a solution. Like, I wish it's kind of weird to have an episode where it's hard to come up with a perfect, like, a way to tackle this. But it's something I've seen time and time again. Like, multiple companies I've been at and I'll talk to, like, it's just, yeah.
And that's actually one of the things that Onomando we're trying to address, because there should be a career path option for people who don't want to manage people, but they're good at their job, right? You shouldn't just stop because you have to kind of get put in this box. So we have come with like senior and then senior lead and things like that. Again, it depends on the nature of the job. There's some jobs where, maybe engineers or something, they don't necessarily need to manage people, but sales do, whatever. Again, anecdotally speaking, but we're trying to create these career paths for what you can do and how you can move along in your career. That doesn't necessarily mean you have people reporting to you, because that doesn't help anyone to put someone who's terrible and doesn't want to manage people in front of managing people.
Exactly. And
so
I also think, and I also think it's, I always find it's a little bit weird because, like, at some point you also hire people to do a certain function. Like, you hire for a business need, right? So when I go back to the design example, you hire because you need a designer. Like, and then if that person spends all this time doing project-based people work or whatever, then you're not designing, and like, okay, now we need to hire another designer to fill that need, right? So it is problematic, and I think one of the things I found is that, like, you can elevate responsibilities a bit. So with that, I mean, like, as you grow in, like, so let's use the design example, but in the beginning you own design, and then you can be like, okay, but now you actually own the brand as well. And owning the brand means other things than just designing. It also means owning brand guidelines and owning the people use our brand the right way. And that's a way to elevate being a designer. So you have some business accountabilities to some extent. And I feel like that's some of the stuff you can do. And you can also be like proactive about, okay, hey, utilizing, for instance, let's take video as a good example. Well, if you own video in your business, that's not something there where like in an agency there maybe, but in like on Amondo, you're probably never gonna have two video people like probably ever, right? So you have one video person, but then that person could also be responsible for making sure that other people produce videos and other people use videos and integrating videos and into other things. So kind of like it's not just producing videos, it's also ensuring other things, and that kind of expanding the responsibilities, that could be part of your career progression to some extent. That's at least something that's worked historically for me and the teams I've been with.
Yeah, and I think you bring up a really good point, because what I would say if you are a designer, well, if you're a designer who does static images, then ask for development in animations, ask for development in web design, ask for development in product design. Like there are ways to kind of expand that knowledge base. And the thing I think to remember, we're not our parents' generation where you're in the same job for 40 years. You are in a job in the startup world, like 3 years is a really long time in startup land, right? Or 4 years. So, use these opportunities to get new skills, to develop new skills, and then move on. It's okay to move on. Like as a manager, I don't want my people to move on, but if they're not happy, at least develop them, because there's that really great cartoon that's like, what if we develop our people and they leave? And the person responds, what if we don't develop them and they stay? Like we want good people, we want them to keep evolving, and if we can't meet their needs, then they go somewhere else, but they speak highly of us.
Exactly.
So that's one way, and that's one thing I would advise people. If you're feeling a little stuck, take those blinders off a little bit. Think about, what do you want your, we talked about this in a couple episodes. One thing I do with my team is like, what is the job? Write your job description for 2 years from now. Write your job description for 5 years from now. What does it say? What are you doing? What responsibilities you have? And let's start reverse engineering to get there. What skills do you need? And use this opportunity to expand. And if you get the skills and you get the responsibility, but you don't get the salary, at least now you have those skills and you have that skill set that maybe you could put you on a path somewhere else.
Definitely. I like that. I think I learned I learned an exercise from my old boss, Glenn, when I was at Templify. He's also an advisor now. I actually talked with him about this exercise the other day because I've been using it ever since with the people on my team. Is that so you draw up your day-to-day. So you say, okay, so Jen, on your day-to-day, how do you spend your time? And it's just approximately. So I spend 10% of my time on check-ins. I spend 20% of my time answering emails, 30% of my time on paid ads or whatever. So you divide your day or your week into percentages. And it doesn't have to be super accurate. It's just like gut feeling. And of course, you can look at your calendar, but just like to have an estimate. So this is how your day looks today. In the perfect world, how would you like that to look? So in the next year, how would that percentage, should that change? Do you want to do more? And he did that for me. It was like, okay, so I do paid search. And then in that we discovered back then, that was like, okay, I was a little tired of doing paid search. So I was like, that I wanted to minimize that. And I wanted to do more of these growth hacky things and head of growth kind of things. And that's kind of how I shaped into becoming head of growth for Templify back then, because it was like this journey of discovering I'm getting us not tired, but I'm like, I've done this. I know my stuff over here. There's not too much growth here. This is actually the stuff, if I could decide my day completely, this would be more the stuff I would be doing. I find that more fun and interesting. And that was a good way to kind of map out what I wanted, and then also start to map out if that was what the business wanted. Because that's what I want to get back to, is that and that here comes the rant, that a lot of people make up titles just because of making up titles. But titles doesn't necessarily equate a business need. Just because you got, we literally had a person, and I'm not going to say it, but that was named, and I think it was executive VP of something. And I remember asking internally in the team back then, I was like, so what does that mean? Well, that title means you have a very important strategic area, but you manage no people. It's like, okay, what the fuck does that mean?
Yeah, what is that? Yeah.
What does that mean? You have no budget. Yeah. Okay, even worse. What does it mean?
What does it mean? Yeah.
Yeah, no, I was like, I was head of growth, and I was like, why my title should be the same then, right? Or why not?
Because it's strategic, right?
Yeah, this is important, right? So titles don't matter, and I remember, and I learned that the hard way when I became the head of growth at Templify, because like I had to really work for that title, and when I got the title, everyone's like, yeah, awesome, and then like, what do you do then? I was like, yeah, and it didn't change anything. Like it didn't actually change any like internally that the change of title. I thought it would have mattered more, but actually that's really the first time I discovered that the changing of the title. That was not what I wanted. That was really not what I wanted. I thought that was what I wanted, but it really wasn't.
Yeah, we also anecdotally, I worked at a company, not my current company, but previously, where I think we had a marketing team of about 6, and 4 people were head of. And, you know, how do you be a head of something when there's no one below you? And so it became a little bit of a joke within the company of like, oh, well, you're the head of this and the head of that and the head of, you know, but people you chase the titles. I will say, though, one thing to kind of negate what you're saying a little bit is one of the advice I give some of my mentees is like, if you're trying to leave a company and they're not giving you the salary, that's when it matters. So say, okay, if you're not going to give me the salary, then at least give me the title. And then you use that title to go somewhere else and get that salary. Yeah.
And that's when it matters. And that's the thing. I think that's the point of this, right? Like the title race or inflation in the titles is just based because of job shift, like the shifts and job hunting. You can become like, you can go from head of marketing to CMO like this, because you're just like, hey, head of marketing, VP of marketing, 6 months later, CMO. Because, you know, like then when you hire a CMO, you typically either you hire another CMO or you hire a VP who's just about to become CMO or something, right? That's how you become a CMO, right? And it has nothing to do with actual skills. Like, because I always, like as an example, when I was United FinTech, I was the head of marketing. And in the beginning, I was employee number 5, like, and then after a while, I was a part of the leadership. And I was like, there's no difference between what I would do and a CMO in this company. Like the CMO would also be part of the leadership meetings. That's what I am. They would be talking to the board. That's what I do. Like, and I would own all marketing. The only difference technically is that I had another C-level as my boss. But beyond that, there's very little difference between who I am and what a CMO would be here. So yes, on my paper, on my CV, it says head of marketing, but it's the same as what a CMO at that company would do, right? So I think that's like that's something I've been thinking a lot about, is that like, and I try to actually tell my team today, like, because some, especially new people, when they enter the scene, like they're very obsessed with titles.
Yes,
like super obsessed,
and especially marketing people. I think like, this is a very marketing focused thing. We love our titles for
titles
some reason.
are important. I had a young guy. I can say this story. I had a young guy, part of Sparkforce, and he not part anymore, but he changed job to a new place from us. Unfortunately, we like him, good relationship, nothing there. And then he became head of a social department, right? And all things sounds great for him, but there's no people in that department. It's just him and another guy in the company. They're 2 people. Right, so the title change doesn't mean anything. It's not like he can do new stuff. It doesn't mean he owns other stuff. He's doing the same stuff. Yeah. It's just his title changed. And he's got like, I think he even gets the same salary. So the point is like, that's not your objective. Like if that's your objective, I as a young career professional, I think you're doing it wrong. Because like you will advance faster in terms of titles and salary, but you'll advance too quickly to a point where you actually can't do the work properly. That's what, like, let's say that guy then shifted to become a head of marketing or something. There would be no hard feeling. I love him, but there would be a lot of gaps, right? He was not be ready for that. But based on title, he would look like he was ready.
Exactly. On paper, it looks like he's ready. Yep.
It looks like he's ready, but he's definitely not, and I think he knows that himself. But
what's also interesting about that, you raised a good point. And this is something that kind of happened to me in my career. Is I was a head of at a small company, and then I went to a manager at a bigger company because I was not yet in the place where I could be a head of at that company. And so when you look at my CV, it's like, it
looks like a step down. Yeah.
Right, yeah. But it wasn't. It's actually a much bigger budget, bigger team, more responsibility. But in that organization structure, I was not yet, the director. I eventually became director. Eventually became, higher in the... But at the moment, it looks like a step down because I went from head of growth to a digital marketing manager. Yeah.
So I think my one of my points with this is just like saying, like, titles matter only when you're looking to change jobs and make that career progression. Don't get me wrong, a title is important. I feel like Danes are actually very loose about titles. That's at least my impression. When I deal with Americans in general, Jesus, the title matters so much. Like,
Yes.
so much more. Like, it's sometimes often like, yeah, I'll take a pay cut just to get the right title. I'm like, okay. That's weird, but sure. But I think my point is this: if you're a young professional or like us, middle-aged professionals or whatever, I've personally at least realized titles doesn't matter anything anymore. I don't look at titles; I look at what you can do. But I also recognize titles matter in the job recruitment process. But when you're in your own development within a company, don't focus on the title. That's not what when you talk to your manager. That shouldn't be your focus point. Your point shouldn't be to get a new title. Your focus point should be to get new responsibilities, to learn new things. And that's where you should grow, at least in my opinion.
And then I think one of the things we have done at Anamundo, which has really helped with this, because it was a little Wild West. Like, I've been in companies where it's like, you're a head of and you're a manager. And it's like, well, why?
Yeah.
And so we've created what we call Skyline. So it's like, okay, if you want to be, there's a progression, right? There's a specialist or there's an associate and then there's a specialist and then blah, 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 and it goes up, and then we have a list of kind of what we expect you to be able to do to take on that title. And that actually helps steer the conversation a little bit more. So when I have those reviews with people and they say, I want to be lead or team lead or something, it's like, okay, in order to be team lead, I need you to improve on this, this, and this, and this, and this. And then when you do that, there should be a bump in salary. Now, there's not always. I say should, because you have to operate within company budgets. And then you, as the employee, you have to be okay with that. You have to be okay, if you choose to say, I will take this new title and these new responsibilities, but the salary might not be there. And if the salary's not there, that's where you have to make a tough choice. But in many jobs, you learn or you earn.
Yeah.
Right?
And actually, this might be a controversial statement for me. I don't know, but I feel like
hot take.
Hot take maybe. But as a business owner, it's also we're as of August we're going to be 16 people now, so quite a lot of people, right?
Wow.
15 people under me technically, and everyone always wants more salary. There's never people who say no to more salary, but people sometimes some people are used to a world where you get a salary increase every year, like and I am okay with giving salary increases for inflation reasons and all these kind of reasons, but sometimes I'm also like thinking about salary increases every year if you don't increase responsibility, if you don't like increase like in what you can do and capabilities and all those things. I'm not a huge fan of that. Like I'm a fan.
You're
of
not
like,
a bottomless pit of money,
No, and because like you hit a ceiling. There is a ceiling.
Yeah.
There's some point where like, okay, now I have a designer, and let's just be extreme, and now we're paying a designer $100,000 a month or something, right? Because you've been there for 8 years, and don't get me wrong, that designer is amazing, world class, but $100K a month.
Well, the thing that we also like I also like to say is like, what else could we be doing with that money?
Yeah, exactly.
Then it comes out of something.
Exactly. So don't get me wrong, you should always push for more salary, but there also comes a point in time where you have to be a little bit realistic and be like, my glass ceiling within the role that I'm fulfilling now is this within salary. Like, you can probably find some designers who get $100,000 a month. But my point is, if you only do design and social media design, like if that's the only thing you do and you're really good, like in there, you're gonna struggle to find some places that can pay you $100,000. Let's put it that way, right? And you have to accept that. And you have to accept that if you want to go beyond that, then you need to be more than just the designer. Then you have to own the brand. Then you have to own whatever it is. And I'm just using design as an example. But I think that realization, a lot of people are missing, in my opinion. Like they feel like they can just keep earning more and doing the same thing. And I'm like, that's not how the world works, unfortunately.
And maybe I'm a little bit old school in this, but I don't really believe in giving salaries just because you've been there the longest. Like,
no, I totally agree.
You have to take on more responsibility. It has to be aligned with business need. Because you also get people who are like, well, I'll start doing this. And I'm like, I don't need that. I don't
Yeah.
need it. Like, these are the things I need if you want to do this and this and this. But I think that people need to take on more responsibility in order to get the salary increase. I don't really believe in giving people more money because they've been there the longest.
Yeah.
If they haven't taken on more responsibility, if you're, and I will also say there is a lot to be said for being content. You know,
Yeah.
there's a lot of, as someone who chased the money and the titles for a really long time, but was very unhappy in my private life because I had no free time. There's something to be said for being in a happy balance of I can live, I can go out to dinner occasionally when I want to, and I can see my kids, and I can take a vacation. You know, like, I think there's the other part of there's more to a good job than money. There's
Absolutely.
more to a good job than a title. So don't lose sight of that.
And I also just want to point out, like, at least if you're listening from Denmark, then this is very, very relevant. It's taxes, right? Like, 'cause I felt this very much on myself. I had a salary increase when I was in my previous job before I started SparkForce. And don't get me wrong, on paper it looks really good, but after tax, it's like, okay, I earned 3,000 to 4,000 more a month. I think it was 3,000. I was like, great increase, but like, is that going to change my life? Not fucking really. It doesn't really matter. Like, don't get me wrong. Like,
I had
it's
one
great,
situation where, it was something like I got not a huge increase, but a bump. We'll call it a bump. But then that put me in a new tax bracket, which meant I was paying more in taxes. So I actually lost money. I made less from this bump because in Denmark you pay higher taxes, obviously based on how much you earn. And with that bump, I was then put in a higher bracket that meant they took more out.
I think it works.
Like,
I think it works more
enough.
like it's more like the increase. So like once you hit a certain amount, the money you earn after that is taxed higher. So and that's like so it's a bit of a problem in Denmark in general that it doesn't really incentivize hard work technically speaking, because like you're not, after you hit that bump you're like, okay, but why? Because like I don't really earn that much after this point. And that's seriously like, so I think I've always been like, my take, you push as hard as you can salary until you get to that bump, and then after that, like literally, then you should work on getting more benefits, stuff like having an extra vacation week, or being able to work from home. I don't know, having some car privileges. I don't know, whatever. Like whatever privileges, paid for internet or something. Right? Those are privileges that actually add a lot more value after you hit a certain salary bracket.
Right, bigger pension contribution is a big one here, right? It's
exactly,
like, okay, I can't get a raise, but put more into my pension, which is a big thing here. But I think, I think we're kind of hitting our 30-minute mark, and I just want to, we kind of went all over the place a little bit, but I think just to summarize from my point of view, and I'll give you the floor after, is, don't go chasing the titles, don't go chasing waterfalls. Sorry. That's a 90s joke. No, but, look at where do you want to be? Is this going to put you on the right path? There's a lot of things to take into consideration. And if salary is a no, can you get other perks that will keep you at that job? And as a people manager, can you give other perks that will keep them in that job? And if they can't, can you give them a title that will help them get that job somewhere else? Exactly.
And work with them so their own personal aspirations matches what the business needs. I think that's important. Like, if you want to grow within the role, like, you want to make sure that also matches where the company's going. Like, if not, then you're hitting a ceiling that you're not going to get past, right? Like, and you might end up growing into a place you don't want to be stuck at. And I think on salary, just my final point here, just to summarize that part, is find a number that satisfies you, makes you content, as you said it, right? Find that number, and once you reach that number, and you should fight for that number. You really rush to get to that number. But once you get there, also be aware that then your priorities probably change. Like, a lot of people, and I respect that, chase that number. I hit that number, and now I'm like, okay, well, what do I want now? Like adding 10,000 before taxes a month doesn't change your life. Trust me. Like, then we're talking way bigger numbers before it changes anything. So find that number, chase that number. And then once you're at that number, be like, okay, what else is it how do you progress from here? And then, because a lot of people often find that they can't focus on the other things until they're at that number. And I respect that, but I also don't go chasing a number forever, because it's not that's not what makes a difference.
Right. Well, they say, I like to think of it this way. They say, like, goldfish grow to the size of their bowl. You can get more money, then you're going to you're going to keep needing more money and you're going to keep chasing money. And then you might find yourself in a shitty job where you're working 24/7, you're on call all the time or whatever it might be, or you're managing people that you don't want to manage. And then are you actually enjoying yourself? Are you having a good time? And this is an American who's been living in Scandinavia to say that contentness is really important.
Exactly.
So get the title you want, find a place you want to be, find a job you like to do, that you love working every single day, and stick around for a little bit.
Stick around. And my last advice is that if you have people you want to keep motivated that you're struggling to do, map it out with them. Like do this exercise where you say, hey, how does your daily life look like now? How do you want it to look in the future? Like do that exercise. That exercise is super healthy. And that's a good way to keep people motivated, because then you can kind of map out, okay, now we're pointing in this direction.
Absolutely.
Cool. On that note, let's end today.
Yes.
Good luck motivating people.
And don't go chasing waterfalls.
Yeah.
Stick to the rivers and the lakes that you're used to, everyone, okay? Bye. Have fun with that, Saran.